inflation is, the question is how much, and the question is whether you can decide that 2% and keep it. The answer is nobody knows. I mean, you do not know, and nobody knows. You can list all kinds of stuff. Nobody knows how much inflation there will be over the next 10 years or 20 years or 50 years or next month. And people talk about it all the time because you're interested in knowing the answer to your question. And they don't know the answer, but there are a lot of people that will tell you they know the answer if you pay them enough, and other people that will tell you for nothing because they think it enhances their prestige and makes them more valuable and all that. But the answer is they don't know, and we don't know either. The best protection against inflation, though, still is your own personal earning power. If you play the violin very well, you will do reasonably well during inflation. I mean, play it better than other people. People will pay you for doing that if you all kinds of things. So your skills will not be taken away, and your money may be. There's a million things that happen in economics, but the answer is we've had a lot of inflation, and it was almost impossible not to have if you're going to mail out the kind of money we've mailed out. And it's probably a good thing we did it. In fact, I think there was one point when the Federal Reserve, which in fact creates the money, if they hadn't done it, your lives would be a lot worse, a whole lot worse now. And that was an important decision. And that's the way that's why you've had inflation. And heaven knows, I mean, it could end. You can throw the country into recession. You can do all kinds of things. The country's going to have recessions, incidentally, and it's going to have depressions periodically. And things will happen differently. And you'll read a newspaper today, and you'll wonder a year from now, why was I reading the newspaper a year ago? I mean, it's just the way it works. I mean, I bought the first stock in 1942. Did I know everything was going to happen afterwards? Of course not. I didn't know a damn thing. But we just needed to have one idea, and that idea wasn't really well formed. It was just probably the way practically every kid felt about the country when we just gone into a war. We thought America was going to win, and it was going to win just generally, and savings bonds were paying 2.9%. I remember that because we bought them. They called them war bonds originally, and they called them defense bonds, and they called them savings bonds, but they were the same thing. And you print loads of money, and money is going to be worth less.
People just looked. They got their confirmation through stock prices, and that's what happens in bull markets. People start out thinking stocks are cheap, and then they start thinking stocks have gone up. and a stock can be a good buy or a bad buy. A bond can be a good buy or a bad buy. It depends on price.
But that leads us to today. I mean, if his premise was that stocks are always going to be a better investment than bonds, that's kind of what you hear today, which we've been hearing for a while, is Tina, there is no alternative, right? You have to buy stocks because bond yields are so low, because interest rates are so low.
Well, if you look at the present situation, we've talked about this before, that you get more for your money in stocks than bonds. That doesn't have to be the case. I mean, but it's usually been the case in America, very usually been the case. And if you buy a 30-year bond today with a yield 2%, you're paying 50 times earnings for an investment where the earnings can't go up for 30 years. Now, if somebody said, I want to sell you a stock that's at 50 times earnings and the earnings can't go up for 30 years, you'd say that doesn't sound very good. Stocks are way better than 30-year bonds. I mean, that's clear. And that's one of the alternatives people have. People really have three basic alternatives: short-term cash, which is an option of doing something later on; long-term bonds or long-term stocks. And stocks are cheaper than bonds. This is when it goes down a lot. I mean, when you're buying dollar bills for 60 or 70 cents, which periodically you get a chance to do in stocks, then assuming you've got the the cash. You don't want to ever, get so that some surprise could really take you out in some way. But if we've got excess cash, we'll buy it as fast as we can.
But at that point, it would be more like a 2009 rather than just December of this past.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
But it's, if you and I own a McDonald's franchise together and it's worth $1 million and you own 50% of it and you come to me and you say, I'll sell out for $400,000, I'll buy you out. Yeah, and you don't know what other exposure there is. I mean, the credit standards have been pretty darn good, and the quality of what's on the books has been terrific, and the liquidity and all of that. The banks are in a whole different situation than they were 10 or 11 years ago. But there was, you don't know the nominals that topple when airlines get bad, and then that affects energy demand. It's just they're using less fuel than they were 3 weeks ago. So there's ripple effects, and there always will be in recessions. That's the nature of recessions, is you get ripple effects. We get ripple effects on the railroad, but there's just there's less intermodal traffic moving now because of the supply chain interruptions and all that sort of thing. But that's, you look at, again, I mean, in 1942, when I bought my first stock, the Philippines were about to fall. I mean, and the day I bought it, the Dow literally was down 2%, and 2% then was only 2 points. Literally, it broke 100 on the downside. But 2%, I felt it. I mean, I went to school in the morning and I bought these 3 shares, and when I came home at night, I already had a loss in them.
If we had not changed any ways we did business, we would be living as we lived in 1776. I mean, productivity gains are the only way that consumption gains come. If productivity per capita stays the same, consumption per capita stays the same. Unfortunately, over a couple hundred years, in farming, for example, we literally came up with tools. We got rid of the horses and had tractors. We came up with better seed, better fertilizer, all of those things. So whereas 80% of the people had to be working on farms just to feed the country a couple hundred years ago, we now have less than 3%. And that means 97% of people can turn out other things that you want. So productivity, everybody understands productivity gains are the key to living better. But when they happen to you, very understandably, you feel that you're getting the short end of the stick. Society may be benefiting, but you're getting hurt. And we tried buying a few businesses that had troubles and all of that, and it wasn't any fun eventually getting rid of 2,000 people at work.
It's surprised us in a lot of ways. It surprised, and we still don't know. We know a lot about this virus. There's a lot of things we don't know yet. And if you look at the graphs of how it's hit different countries and everything, it just shows you how a very advanced economically world can get disrupted by something that in ways that even when you're in it you can't predict. And the economic impact has been this extremely uneven thing where I don't know how many, but many hundreds of thousands or millions of small businesses have been hurt in a terrible way. Most of the big companies overwhelmingly have done fine. If you're running a deficit getting close to 5% when things are really good, that's a new world. And neither the Republicans or Democrats are particularly concerned about it. And we're not having a lot of inflation. That wasn't supposed to happen, but it's happening. And that's why I say you don't want to get hung up on trying to make economic analysis, because nobody's any good at it. You don't get rich doing that. If you look at, you mentioned that Forbes list, if you get on the list, the number of people that have done that by economic analysis, I think are just about zilch on there.
It happens a few times in your life, and all of a sudden you see something important that, why in the hell didn't I see this in the first place? Maybe it's a week ago, maybe it's a year ago, maybe it's 5 years ago, maybe it's learning how to get along with people. I mean, whether actually it's better to be, kind or not, or whether, they're just learning how to have, if you want the world to love you, what you have to do, or you know it when you see it, but you didn't see it for 10 years before. And I don't know whether Charlie's got some thoughts on that or not, but that's happened in a few situations in business where I've looked at a company for a decade, and then there's something that it just all gets rearranged in your mind, and you can say, well, why didn't I see this 5 years ago? But usually, I've had it happen a few times, obviously, and everybody here has, and just in different areas of their lives.
Allocating
I
capital.
enjoy two things about it. One, I know I'll win over time. That doesn't mean I'll beat everybody else or anything like that, but I'm in a game that's very, very, very easy if you have the right lessons in your mind about what you're buying. I'm not buying stocks. I'm buying pieces of overwhelmingly American business. And I'm happy when that's when I'm doing it. I'm happy when stocks are going down. I'm happier when stocks are going down because I can buy more of them with the same amount of money. I'd be happy if I was a farmer. I'd want farmland to go down so I could buy more acreage.